Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we have a nice little show piggybacking on the Nosferatu phenomenon, but not in the way that a bunch of degenerates and people who are trying to do low-hanging fruit content these days are. We are instead going to be talking about a movie about making the original Nosferatu movie. If you don't know what this is, you should really check it out. It's a very underrated horror movie. It is called Shadow of the Vampire, starring John Malkovich and Willem Dafoe.
A pretty star-studded cast for a low-budget movie.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this was made in 2000, so
yeah.
We'll have to, which is kind of interesting with some of the trivia points in here, but we are going to curb our likes and we're going to try to remove any other flavor words like yeah, you know, so, but, and if we do anything like that, please tell us in the comments and we will try to get better, and then maybe you'll start giving us money. That would be great. So, without further ado, we are Why Does This Exist? We are a show that talks about the very weirdest in pop culture, whether we're talking about a movie like we're about to do, a video game, any other form of a product or thing that exists, or music, or whatever the hell it is. We could talk about it for days. But we're only going to give you a fleeting moment of time that you can do whatever you want with forever. I don't really care if you just go off in the corner and pleasure yourself to these things. Or maybe this is what you do in the background. I don't know. Or perhaps you just drink a goblet of blood while you're listening to this show and it soothes you. Or perhaps it takes the pain away of your childhood trauma. Maybe I remind you of your grandmother. I really don't know. But anyway, if you know what you want to do with this show, go right ahead and do it. If you want to, all of the links and everything like that are in the description, so you know what to do. And if you don't want to do it, I really don't give a shit. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. Rob, tell the people about the Shadow of the Vampire. I'm going to go drink my tea that has meat in it. The meat is called Odin's Skull, for those who are interested.
I thought you said it had meat in it.
No, I do not put meat in my tea. That sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
And probably very unsanitary.
Probably something that the vampire would drink.
Probably.
Anyway, Shadow of the Vampire is a horror movie about the filming of the original Nosferatu in 1921. The original, of course, the original was a silent movie, came out in 1922. It was a German film. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the scariest movies of all time.
It is.
It's pretty good.
Possibly, I mean, it's probably the scariest horror movie. It's probably the scariest movie of all time because it was one of the first.
Yes. Yeah, it was one of the first horror movies, and
I think the fact that it still scares the shit out of people to this day, despite being made in 1921, is still a testament that makes it the greatest.
Well, the Nosferatu character itself is just like one of the most horrifying, like, and creepiest things
Yes.
you'll ever see.
Max,
So
the appearance that Max Schreck gave, I mean, he also had a 6'3" frame and was very,
yeah,
very skinny.
yeah,
Just, it was just perfect,
yeah,
especially in black and white and everything like that. It just, all of it works to
yeah,
the point where it doesn't matter how many reiterations they make of this. It's the original one is still the best, and
yeah,
the best part about that is no words. It's probably one of the
yes,
it's got to be the most celebrated silent movie of all time, next to, I would say, next to anything Charlie Chaplin.
yeah. I would say, like, if probably the most celebrated Charlie Chaplin silent movie. You know,
Yeah, I would give it that.
um, but we're not talking about Nosferatu. We're talking about Shadow of the Vampire, which of course
Yes,
is takes place during the shooting of Nosferatu. And
right,
so director F.W. Murnau is played by John Malkovich, and he's shooting Nosferatu, which is of course it was an unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. They
right.
tried to get the rights from Stoker's widow, and she wouldn't let them have it. So they were like, "All right, we'll just film the same exact movie and just change all the characters' names." And that's what
Is
they
there
did.
true? Is that how? I wonder how much of that is true of parts of this movie, because there are some things that they've taken that were true.
Oh, that was true, 100%.
Really?
Yes, they could not get the rights to Dracula, so they decided to just film the movie and change all the character names and change
Ah,
it from him going from Transylvania to England to going from Czechoslovakia to Germany. Uh
wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. And Stoker's widow sued anyway.
Yes, and I believe she
And
actually won too,
yes, a court
because the
root.
court found that it was too close to the actual original story to be considered its own unique thing.
Yeah. And the court ruling had ordered all copies of the film to be destroyed.
Yeah.
But but thankfully they did not destroy every copy. There were some prints that survived, and we
Mhm.
ended up, and this film was still celebrated. So take that, Mrs. Stoker.
Yeah. Probably had the same freaking lawyers as Frank J. Zamboni.
Probably. Well, she can stuff her sorries in a sack, because anyway, evil survives and evil wins.
Yeah. Uh,
Evil always wins.
so
All those nursery rhymes and all those Disney movies and all that crap that your parents taught you about how good prevails and always wins, that's not true. Because we have Nosferatu,
yep.
an elegant ass time.
Well, doesn't that mean that evil didn't win because they didn't destroy all the copies? The lawyer's probably evil, no?
I guess. Well, Stoker's widow is the evil.
Yeah, and so she didn't really win because they didn't destroy all the copies.
No,
Yeah.
you know what? So maybe the love of this movie did save the day, and I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All right. Excuse all of the previous ramblings that I was trying to make in an effort to praise evil, but it failed. I suppose good does win in the end sometimes.
Yep. Anyway, so they're filming Nosferatu and they're filming all the scenes in Germany and Murnau. It's actually interesting because we get to see Murnau directing. And I think John Malkovich really does a great job playing Murnau.
I mean, he
he
does
really
great in
nails.
everything.
Yeah, he's a great actor. So they're filming and it's interesting to hear him actually directing them like exactly perfect, like he tells them exactly what to do because it's a silent movie, so no one's going to hear his direction. So he's framing every single scene while he's filming and
Right.
and telling the actors exactly what to do, and it's actually really interesting.
And
That
I'm
the
sure
way
that was the
you
old
get to see
way.
it. Oh yeah, definitely. Because why wouldn't you? When
Right.
you can uh when
I want
when you're not going to be heard anyway, you might as well tell them exactly what you want them to do.
right. I wonder if that adjustment was one of the tougher adjustments for silent directors when
I'm
they
sure it
switched
was.
when they switched to talkies.
I'm
I'm
sure it
sure
was.
there's a ton of things that I'm sure it was very expensive because there's probably a ton of takes that they can't use because directors were still trying to break that habit.
Yeah.
But-
So they continue to film, and they're going now to Czechoslovakia to film the vampire scenes. And Murnau is saying that he hired Max Schreck, who's this big character actor, to play the vampire, and he's not going to be seen without his makeup on. And he's immersed himself completely in the role, so that he'll only film at night, and the entire cast and crew think that's what's actually going on. So they get to Czechoslovakia. They start filming in the tavern, which of course is one of the big. I actually like how they almost did like a shot-for-shot recreation of Nosferatu. Also, we actually get to see
Mhm.
the exact process of the filming of Nosferatu, but it's
Yes.
like from behind the camera instead of in front. Instead of through the camera lens.
It's very cool and it's very surreal.
Yeah.
There's not there's I wish that this genre of film was bigger than it is, where it's and I don't mean horror or very dark comedies as some would categorize this. I
Yeah.
mean movies about making movies.
Yeah.
I
Like a
wish that
film within a film.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wish that there were more movies like that because a lot of them are really neat.
Yeah, there aren't many. I mean, you have stuff like Ed Wood.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's another one that I would love to do on this show.
yeah, we have definitely talked about that, and
Yep.
probably will appear in a future episode.
One
Uh,
of the more recent ones is The Disaster Artist, which is about the room. That might also be
yes.
another interesting one to do, but
Could you argue that Blair Witch Project is one? Because technically, even though it's supposed to be like a found footage horror movie, they are filming a documentary
I
in the.
hadn't thought about it like that.
So it kind of almost can be the same kind of
Hmm.
genre where it's a film within a film. And all of the marketing that surrounded Blair Witch Project was making it so it was as if it was real, like it was a real documentary. Uh,
Yeah.
so I would say that that could count.
I think you could make the argument,
Yeah.
and maybe I'll rewatch it with that in mind, and I might enjoy it more because I honestly do not like the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, I like it. I think it's a pretty good movie.
It get
It's a
the
pretty good
camera
horror movie.
the camera gets too shaky for me sometimes. I know that's the point,
Yeah.
but the shakiness, that stuff always throws me off.
See, I like the found footage horror genre. I think it's extra scary because it feels real.
Sometimes I think it depends on the way that it's done. Like the
Yeah.
VHS movies, I love those,
Yeah.
but if
There was
it's
one that I've
if
never
it gets
seen
if
that's
it gets too shaky and too gimmicky like that and Cloverfield, it takes me out of it sometimes.
I've never seen Cloverfield, but there's one that I actually want to check out that I've never seen. It's very obscure. It's hard to find. It's called the Poughkeepsie Tapes, and apparently it's very, very scary.
Really?
I've seen a couple of scenes from it, and it looks just absolutely horrifying.
Well, have you ever
Uh,
been to Poughkeepsie?
yes, I have actually
Oh,
several times.
well, there you go.
Um, so anyway, they get to this tavern where they're filming the tavern scene for the actual movie, and the tavern lady, I guess whoever she owns the tavern, freaks out because they took all of the crucifixes off the walls, specifically for the shots. Like they weren't doing it because like, oh, we're trying to be satanic or anything like that, or attract the vampire. They're just actually trying to like make better shots. So they took all the
Mhm.
crucifixes out, and she freaks out. So this is kind of the first indication that something is amiss with this film.
Mhm.
We then eventually, well, the cameraman gets whacked also at this point, and so Murnau flies back to. Well, first they film the scene where what was it? The main character, what's his name? Hutter, right? Shit. Thomas Hutter, who is the stand-in for Jonathan Harker from Dracula. He gets to Count Orlok's castle, and we first finally get to meet Max Schreck, who's playing the vampire, who is played by Willem Dafoe again in a great performance, like another like titan of an actor, Willem Dafoe.
Yes. No.
Um,
Defoe. This part of Max Schreck was written specifically for him. They had nobody
Yeah.
else in mind to play him. So
and it just perfect casting. He's just amazing.
In a making of featurette that I saw of this that's on the DVD, they picked him because they had I think he was performing in some pop-up theater or something like that. I think it was called Pop-Up Playhouse, the name of the theater in New York or somewhere where he was performing, and they would come by and they would see, and the director would come by and see him every once in a while, and they really got into the performances, and the director liked how he liked there was something about the way where he played something where it was sexy and terrifying at the same time, and that's just to paraphrase their words.
That sounds like a Willem Dafoe role.
Yeah, kind of. There's something about this man, but also he was cast to be the Green Goblin specifically from his performance of Max Schreck in this movie.
Oh, that makes sense, actually.
Like, they just called him right away and said, I guess Sam Raimi saw this, which I'm sure Sam Raimi saw that and just said, and called his people and said, you have to get me Willem Dafoe's number. I need him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what a casting for that role.
Perfect.
I mean, Green Goblin is just like amazing, which is funny because,
I've got to rewatch that Spider-Man.
It's good. I mean, I've watched it. I watch it every once in a while, and it's a little campy, as many Sam Raimi films are, but
but it's got the right amount.
Yes,
I think.
And it's charming, and Willem Dafoe just gives like a stellar performance in that, so it's like it really makes up for it. Anyway,
well, I think the campiness is kind of done in almost to a degree of fan service where you kind of want to see campiness. So so you're all for it.
It's a comic book film, so it's not supposed to be. And it was before, the MCU made comic book films. Oh, it's got to be so serious, and we're gonna make it into this huge franchise. They were kind of just dipping their toes into comic book films at that time.
Right. And I mean, that was the first comic book movie that wasn't a total disaster, that wasn't Batman or Superman.
Yeah, that's true.
So
they're really Blade came out before Spider-Man, I think.
That's true. People liked Blade.
Was pretty Blade really caught the horror vampire audience more than the comic book audience, I feel
like. I was going to say that. I think
it kind of stood out on its own a little bit.
Yeah, I think Blade caught more of a niche audience where Spider-Man caught the target audience. So I mean in terms of blockbuster gangbuster numbers, Spider-Man was able to compete with Batman and Superman and also be considered a serious great movie where suddenly everybody was magically interested in superhero movies after nobody wanted to touch it for years. But, it's like that line in Succession where everyone tells you no and you do, where he says everyone tells you no and you do it, and you achieve these immaculate things, and everybody turns around and acts like it was so damn obvious.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing it, but I recently watched the episode, so it's still like sort of fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
That's another amazing show. Anyway,
I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, you definitely need to watch it, because if you like Sopranos, you would love this. And I know you love Sopranos. We did an episode on it, which you can go back in time and listen to and tell us how bad we fucked it up.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So they get to this castle and they finally meet Shrek, and he is 100% in character at all times,
Yes.
and of course at this point the cast and crew is still convinced that he is just an actor that is very dedicated to his craft. And so they start filming the scenes with Thomas meeting Count Orlok and, you know, giving him the contract and all that. And the scene where he gets like a paper, I don't know if he gets a paper cut or he cuts himself on like a envelope opener or something, or a knife. And, you know, the whole thing is that it's supposed to excite Count Orlok, but he actually literally gets excited and starts trying to suck his blood.
Yes, that's one of the best scenes in the movie too.
Yes.
Because and Eddie Izzard is great. I know
Yes.
Susie Eddie Izzard is the true name, but we'll just say Eddie Izzard just for the sake of convenience.
Well, it was Eddie Izzard at this point. So.
At this point in time, it was just Eddie.
Yeah. So this, you know, more and more the actors are and the crew are getting freaked out because they're like, you know, he can't be just method acting. He's just like, it's just he's like too dedicated to it.
Right. Plus weird shit is happening. And
yeah,
also
weird shit keeps happening. The cameraman gets whacked. So they have to call in a new cameraman who is played by Carrie Elves. Yes. I can't ever pronounce his name.
I think it's
the guy from The Princess Bride.
Yep.
and Robin Hood Men in Tights, another great actor.
Yeah.
Also, Udo Kier, a very famous German character actor, who's if you've seen pretty much any movie, you've probably seen him before. He's been in so many like different movies and so recognizable. He plays the producer Albin Grau, and again does a great job. Just everybody was perfectly cast for this movie. It was really like everyone really did great job. So at this point, Murnau flies back to Germany because he has to try to calm down the investors because they're freaking out because of all these production delays and people dying on the set and all this weird stuff that's happening.
Oh, also, they're also freaked out because Max Schreck will only cast it. He'll only be filmed at night.
Yes.
So, like one of the early complaints of the crew is they drive hours and they wait for hours at night just to set up one 5-minute shot that they do quickly.
Yeah. He also refuses to sail. So there's a scene where they have to go to this island to film the finale and he won't get on the boat. So they have to end up building this giant like fake boat outside the castle to film the boat scenes. And at this point, Murnau is getting more and more frustrated with Schreck. He keeps threatening him and is yelling at him. They get in arguments. He's like, you have to do this. Otherwise I'll replace you with a stand-in. And this is kind of like the part where we start to see that Schreck is not just an actor. He is actually a vampire.
Yes.
And they have some kind of deal. And I would argue that Murnau is the actual villain of this movie and not Max Schreck.
I was going to say, we also get to... I agree with you, and there's several things that Max Schreck does where he's almost childlike at certain points.
Yeah.
And he's also tragic in some ways, too. And that ties into what was a deleted scene that ties something into the very beginning that seems kind of out of place with the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And there's parts where it's a little bit after they have this argument, and there's other parts where after they finish filming, they just leave the equipment where it is, and they go off to do whatever it is, the cast and crew, and they leave Schreck alone. And Schreck starts exploring all of the different equipment, and he starts playing with the projector and the camera, and he's watching what was filmed, and he's so enamored by it because he just can't believe that people are able to do this now. He's floored by the progress of technology, and that's probably the first part where those are the first clues where we as the audience start to understand that he's not just an actor.
Yeah. Also, the argument with Murnau, where Murnau's like, part of our deal is that you would not attack my crew.
Right.
And so,
but in that
right
same
there, we're kinda
argument, he offers up the makeup girl or something, or something
yes.
like that.
As the script, it was a script girl,
Right, the
script writer.
script girl. That's what it is. He offers her up instead because her role is less significant as the cameraman. He's basically
Yes.
trying to bargain with him and saying, "Well, I told you not to kill my cast and crew, but if you were good, but I need you, so maybe don't pick the most important people. Maybe get somebody replaceable, like and
Yeah.
it's showing you how desperate he is to make this movie because it's perfect. Sometimes the detriment of any perfectionist, it really is. It's if it's not perfect, it can't. It's just it like they perfectionists have a big issue with things if they're not done to a certain way, and when it works, it works. It really works.
Yeah.
But
you could tell that Murnau is very much trying to make his vision and will do so at any cost.
right, and I think that's what the movie's really about. It's not about the making of the movie, but it's about what a director is what a director is willing to do to achieve his vision, and how he'll basically sell his soul to the devil to do this, to make this happen.
Yes.
And it's really interesting. It's almost like Faust for making a movie.
Really,
in a
yeah,
way.
you could say it is, because the deal he makes with Shrek is almost a Faustian bargain.
Yes, and it's German too, so why not?
Yeah.
But but the other parts where we see Shrek as in a tragic light, which I think is where you're about to get to, is when it's at night, they compromise and they decide that they're going to build the ship off of the castle so that they can film. And at night, they're filming the famous ship scene, and the producers are drinking.
Yes.
And the producers are drinking, and Shrek ends up walking over, and Shrek takes a couple of swigs. He also just grabs a bat and immediately sucks his blood.
Pulls an Aussie on him.
Yeah, he does. And the producers, well, first of all, they're drunk, but second, they see this and they don't get scared. They just think, "Holy shit, this guy's a great method actor." And one of them even tells him the German Expressionist Theater needs you.
Yeah.
Which is also a nod to the real life Max Schreck, because he was in the German Expressionist Theater. And they're asking him about. Well, I'm sorry. This is or is this when they're eating dinner or when they're filming the dinner scene? I forget. But anyway, this is that scene. They're talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula, and they read the book, and Max Schreck tells them that he's insulted by it and that he thinks it was embarrassing and he didn't like it. And they're surprised, and they just say, "Well, what's not to like? It's a horror masterpiece. That's what this movie is about." And he talks about what it's like for him, and he's telling them about how difficult it is for him, and he says the most depressing part of the book, and they're like, "Oh, it's a tragic story," and he says the saddest part of that book is when they catch him setting the table, is when the young man catches him trying to set the table. How would he know? For centuries, he hasn't eaten a single morsel of human food in centuries. He's been all alone for centuries. There's no more of his kind. He can't make more and they ask him, "What if you make more vampires?" just as a joke, and he's to just kind of feed the character work, and he just says, I'm too old, and I don't even know if I can, and I can't remember how." And he says he also would not remember how. Basically, he's saying Dracula would not remember how to turn a vampire. Dracula would be all alone. He would have no knowledge or memory of how to pick the right food, how to go into town and buy bread. He would have no idea how to pick cheeses or wine. He would have no idea how to make a proper meal. So it took him out of the book because he just, to a real vampire, he just is telling them this is not accurate. This would not
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And he's basically telling them, guys, I'm a vampire and it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's miserable. And they ask him about how he turned into a vampire, and he tells them that there was this woman who turned him, and he doesn't really know what she did, but just basically one day I was human, I met this girl, and the next day I was a vampire and I never saw her again, so I have no idea.
Hmm.
And he's just expresses how lonely he is, and
Yeah.
pun intended, being a vampire sucks is what he's saying. But
Yeah.
the long-winded tie-in that I
Well,
am
it's very
getting
much a
to,
curse.
yes, it is a curse. But
Modern vampire media has like romanticized vampires and made it so, oh, it's so happy, and they're just immortal beings, and they, like,
yes, and they have sex all the time, and
yeah, and it's
they seduce
no,
people
it was
and
always
everything.
traditionally, it was always a curse. It was, and oftentimes it was a way to explain uh tuberculosis. Many
Yes,
vampire cases in the 1800s were actually cases where a person had tuberculosis, and they didn't know what was causing these people to die, and they would just waste away to nothing, and they thought it was a vampire. Um, so
yes,
it was a horrifying. It was supposed to be very sad and horrifying, and that's one thing that I'm very happy about with the new Nosferatu movie, is that it's brought back vampirism as a scary monster. That's a curse, not
yes.
just romanticized BS.
Yeah, it was great. I love
Yeah,
the new Nosferatu.
yeah.
I I really thought that it got robbed. By the
You
substance.
know
It
what?
really it should
Friggin'
have won for best effects.
the Oscars are bullshit.
They are.
It's a
They
load
are.
of horseshit. Always they sneak in some stupid movie that nobody has seen at the end that always wins every single Oscar. And it wasn't any different this year because it was that weird freaking prostitute movie that won like a whole bunch of awards. And nobody's ever seen it or heard of it. It just came out of nowhere to win all these Oscars.
Yeah.
Um,
What can you do?
but
Well,
I can really see how this movie specifically influenced the 2024 Nosferatu remake. I think especially Willem Dafoe's performance as Count Orlok / Max Schreck, I think really influenced the Count Orlok that we saw in the remake.
oh yes, I think so. That was the third time that and that and that was I think that was the fourth time. Well, he has been in a vampire movie four times. This was the second time.
Yeah,
His
so
first
this is,
was
he's also been in 2 Nosferatu movies at this
yes,
point.
he has been in two Nosferatu movies. One is Nosferatu, and the other one he is trying to kill Nosferatu.
Yeah.
So go figure. The the first movie he was also in The Hunger and Daybreakers.
Hmm.
But the long-winded thing that I was trying to get to is in the very beginning of the movie, just it's almost the segue between being introduced to being what the hell is his name? Murnau? Is that his name?
Yeah, yeah.
Murnau?
FW
Yes,
Murnau.
Murnau. Yes, in the first scene of being introduced to Murnau and the leading actress and who is
Greta
what the heck is
Schroeder,
her name? Yes, Greta Schroeder
played by
and the
Catherine McCormick.
yes, and the producers and everything. Once we're between that and them starting the voyage, which interesting, the train is called Sharon, like
Mhm.
the ship that crosses the river Styx. Um, they there's a weird in between scene where Murnau just goes to a cabaret kink club for
Yeah,
weird. He just goes there and it's never explained. It's just he goes to a kink club, he does some drugs and sleeps with a cabaret performer probably, and has a grand old time. But
I think it's trying
we
to
never see
establish
that
that Myrna.
again.
Well, it establishes that he does use drugs because later, when we finally get to Heligoland, which is where they're filming the final scenes, it's an island. They find Murnau in a drug. He's like drugged out, and
Yes.
he admits to the producers that Shrek. This is the point where we know are now confirmed 100%, even though we, as the audience, have known this whole time. But he admits to the producers that Shrek is a vampire, and in exchange for being in the movie, has Murnau allowed him to basically prey on Greta Schroeder, who's playing Ellen Hutter.
Yes.
And
well, the point that I was getting at was the cabaret that he goes to. There was a there was a subplot for the film that they removed where the woman that he sleeps with, I guess we would be truly introduced to the woman that he sleeps with at the cabaret. Her name is Micheline.
mm-hmm.
The subplot would be that she's the one who inspired him to make Nosferatu, and she's also the vampire who created Max Schreck.
Yeah.
So she would be in the subplot. This woman who his lover at the cabaret.
Interesting.
Yeah, his love for the cabaret would have been the missing link to all of it, because we never really find out how he was told about Max Schreck. He does
mention that he found Max Schreck in the castle at one point.
But I think he says it while he's in the drugged out stupor, so we don't necessarily get the truth.
Yeah.
So that would have been cool to see, but for whatever reason, they either didn't shoot it or they removed it from the movie.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, they, realize they're trapped on this island with a freaking real vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And they decide, well, let's film the last scene, and what we'll do is we'll basically set it up so we can actually kill him with sunlight when he's supposed to die with sunlight. We'll set up this giant, I don't know if it's a metal cover or some kind of shutter or something, so that way it'll be a giant chain. We'll release the weights, and then it'll open up, and he'll be hit by the sun and die. So they proceed to film the scene, and at this point, Greta freaks the F out because she sees that Max has no reflection in the mirror. So she starts freaking out. So they drug her to get her compliance.
Right. Well, we also know that she's also a drug user.
Yes. Yeah. And this is kind of part of their plan also, is they drug her to get her compliance, and then allow Shrek to feed on her. And when he feeds on her, he drinks the laudanum, which is opium, liquid opium, basically, or morphine.
Yes.
And so he gets all fucked up too from it.
Willem Dafoe grabbed her boob for 5 minutes for that.
Yeah, that's true. He does. He does grab her boob. So they cut the thing, and of course, then they find out that Shrek had already disabled the chain, and so the shutter doesn't open. So at this point he's like, "Yo, you're trying to kill me? Well, guess what? Now I'm going to kill you." So he kills the producers. He kills the cameraman, and
which I'm sure was his intention the whole time, because when was the last time he really fed on this many people?
Exactly.
He probably didn't really give a shit about making the movie in the first place.
No, he was feeding on animals and rats and bats and crap. So this is the first time he's actually had a full belly from real humans.
Right. It's like going from prison.
Yeah. So he starts killing them, and all the while Murnau is filming. He's filming this whole thing. And at this point, the rest of the crew breaks in, and they open the shutter, and it kills Shrek. He gets exposed to the sunlight finally, and he dies for real life. And I really like the effect that they use. It almost looks like a film burning when he gets vaporized by the sun.
Yes.
It's great. It's a really great effect.
Well, the other thing is the minute that he starts, like as they're releasing the sun and he's dying, Murnau just starts filming like a madman, and he starts
Yes.
moving the camera to get the perfect shot.
Yeah.
And that again, it's even more showing how far gone he is. Where
Yes.
he's just like where it's not even he's not even absorbing the fact that this monster just tried to kill him and his whole crew, and it's dying, or that they just drugged this poor actress.
She's like still directing
Just
Max
get
Schreck
there.
at this point after he murdered the crew and kill and like sucked the blood of Greta, like drained her basically.
Right. It just shows
he's still
you how
directing him.
right. It just shows you how obsessed he is.
It's
with
essentially a
with
snuff film at
completing
this
thing.
point.
Yeah. So and he's just going like a madman. And honestly, just John Malkovich and Willem Dafoe. I don't know who's better in this movie.
Yeah, they're both great.
They're both equally
really
amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both equally amazing. They're both incredible at in everything.
I mean, John Malkovich has this ability to, no matter how bad the movie is, just like give the greatest performance possible. You know, you watch a movie like Con Air, you know,
I was just gonna say.
he's like amazing in Con Air, even though the script is not great, and it's not a great movie by any means. But
John Malkovich is what makes that movie great because of just how freaking psychotic he is.
Yeah.
Like you almost, if he wasn't the worst person ever, you would kind of root for him.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, I could.
There's even in this movie, he's like this demented person. He all he cares about is getting this shot. And even at the end, the crew come in and they see what's going on, and they're all freaked out. And all he cares about, he's like, "Oh, give me the end slate. I need the end slate. Get the So they pick it up and they, abide by him, and then he says, "I think we have it." That's all he cares about is that he
or
got
like
the shot.
Right, or even when it's the dinner scene when Eddie Izzard is cutting the bread, he's intentionally telling him not to look at the bread or not to watch the knife, and then he screams at him so that he really does cut his finger for real. Where this guy really doesn't care about anything other than getting the right shot and the right reaction and everything.
Yeah.
And he keeps throwing his actors into dangerous situations, but he doesn't care at all.
Yeah.
Because he just wants the shot.
Well, he also, sold out his
that too.
His leading lady to the vampire, so
he
the
sold
vampire
out
would agree to be in the movie, basically.
I mean, he sold out everybody for the
That's
vampire.
True.
Well, we also also in his drunken stupor, Max Schreck throws like 3 people off the ship, and I think he drains one of them.
Yes.
So he just murders like 4 people, possibly 5. I don't. It's pretty wild.
I want to. So, I really like the cinematography of this movie because it was filmed almost in the same filming style as a silent movie. It looks like they use the same techniques they would have used back in the 20s or the 30s to film.
Yes.
And they even use like the title cards in between that, to give the exposition, between scenes.
Right. Actually, that's actually one of the funnier parts about the death scene. After he's filming, there's still not all of this crazy supernatural stuff just happened, and he's screaming at one of the guys who just walks in. What the hell just happened? And he's telling him to give him an end title card and then to click it.
Yeah.
And he's standing in this spot where the vampire just died.
Yeah.
Like, it's.
But
that whole scene is just perfect.
Yeah.
It's a perfect finale, the way that they do it.
It really is, and it shows that cements in your mind that Murnau is the bad guy the whole time, because he just is willing to throw out anybody he can just to get his shot and get his movie done. And we kind of see from the beginning that he's a little obsessed and kind of crazy, but this really cements it that he is like an absolute psychopath and the true antagonist.
Yes, I think the moral of the story is don't go to a cabaret and have opium.
Yeah, opium is probably a bad idea.
Yeah, you can go to the cabaret, but just try not to get high. Or too high. Try not to get too high. If you're going to do drugs, tolerance is make sure you're gonna be safe. Bring an accountability buddy, somebody who's gonna be clean and drive you home, and after you fondle your lover at the cabaret, who may or may not be a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, you know what? If he wasn't into drugs, I guarantee he wouldn't have met this woman, and none of this would have happened. So, I think the moral of the story is just don't do drugs, especially opiates.
Yep.
But you could go to all the cabarets you like, I guess.
Just not those weird ones.
Maybe avoid the German kink club ones.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Germany, then in that case, I guess just go home and read a book.
Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Preferably Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yep.
Oh, another fun fact. After Nosferatu was made, the film studio declared bankruptcy so that they couldn't pay any royalties to the estate to Stoker's widow.
Oh, pretty smart.
Yeah. So there is that, but there is, like we said, some truth to this movie, and a lot of people in the town where they filmed Nosferatu believed there was belief that Max Schreck was a real vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie just kind of they kind of just film a what if version where it's what if Max Schreck was a real vampire?
Yeah.
But everything else is generally the same, and the only people who know are the film is really the director and very few other people who can kind of spread the lore.
Mm-hmm.
So really cool. Also, you can go to the castle where they filmed Nosferatu, and you can find all of the iconic shots and everything still.
Really? Oh, Orava Castle.
Yes.
It's in Slovakia.
Yes, it is.
So the next time you go to Slovakia, check it out.
Yep.
It actually looks very similar to not Bram Stoker, to Dracula's real castle, Bran Castle in Transylvania. Which, again, that's another castle if you want to go to see the real Dracula's castle.
Yes.
Bran Castle in Transylvania. I don't know if it's actually in it is in Transylvania proper. Okay. But that was arguably one of the most famous places where Dracula lived, the real Dracula lived. Vlad the Third, was he? Vlad the Impaler, who was Vlad the Third. It was Vlad the Impaler, which is who Bram Stoker based his character of Dracula off of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the movie was originally I think they made the right move with the title too, because it was originally going to be called Burn to Light, which makes sense because of the way that they shoot because of the way that the death scene plays out and what it looks like, as we just said. But the director ended up changing the name because Willem Dafoe was confused because he mispronounced the title. So he just said, he looked at the thing and he looked at the script and he just said, "Who's Ed?" And the director was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "It's called Burn Ed to Light." And he's just they just I wonder if Willem Dafoe was serious when he was asking the shit, or if he was just like ribbing the guy, and
Could be.
just to see what happened.
Yeah.
And then the director just freaked out and was like, "Oh shit, we have to change the title of this movie."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, E. Elias Merhige is the director, but just really funny if Willem Dafoe was just full of shit and the guy just freaked out. But you are right. They did try to create. They did try to use those those old silent movie techniques
Yeah.
to create the aesthetic of old film. The cinematographer, he shot a lot of it with Kodak Vision 800T film stock, which is a, a high-speed specialty stock with very coarse grain, and he shot it in super 35 millimeter. So he tried to make sure that when they enlarged it, it looked like the real deal. So
That makes sense.
yeah, so they really did their homework with this stuff. And honestly, I think Shadow
Yeah.
of the Vampire is a much better title.
Yeah, Shadow of the Empire definitely works way better.
It
And
tells you what it tells you what it is.
yeah,
Where if it were a movie called Burn to Light, I think a lot of people would have just not even
they would have skipped
noticed
it.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Shadow of the Vampire definitely works better.
Yeah,
Especially being
Burn
that
to
this
Light
was
sounds more like an album title.
or just not a vampire movie
Yeah.
at all. Uh I think that especially since it's a independent movie and was low budget, it was important that they made something that was recognizable to people. So, Shadow of the Vampire definitely works better.
Yes. It won a
Also,
few awards.
it
It
fits
won
in with
quite
with
It
the
won a couple
theme.
awards too. Like it won some Golden Globes. It won a Golden Globe, some Golden Satellite Awards. Willem Dafoe won. He was and Independent Spirit Awards, which are better. Which the Independent Spirit Awards and Golden Globes are better
He
award
was nominated
ceremonies.
for an
He,
Academy Award
yeah, which
for
pretty
this.
damn cool. He
Yeah,
didn't win, of course, but pretty damn cool. I don't think anyone's ever won for a vampire, but it's cool that he got nominated. I wonder if
yeah.
anyone else has been nominated for playing a vampire. I would be surprised if Gary Oldman was not nominated for for being Count Dracula in Bram Stoker's Dracula, but then again, Gary Oldman got screwed for years.
Mm-hmm.
So that honestly wouldn't surprise me if they just
Yeah.
didn't even nominate him for that performance. But they won a few. It won a few awards. So and was nominated for a lot of the big ones. So good for them, especially with this low budget movie.
Yeah.
I will see that. I will say that this is really funny. That the the movie was produced by Nicolas Cage. So just to tie it back to Con Air for a minute, it was filmed by his. It was produced by his company, Saturn Films, and
Mm-hmm.
they had originally thought about Nicolas Cage being Shrek, which would have made this a completely different movie, and it probably would have just been one of those cult. It would have been a cult movie for different reasons because he probably would have been hilarious and everybody would have loved it and would have become a meme years later. Versus this more serious and amazing performance that John Malkovich had I'm sorry, that Willem Dafoe had done. But when Willem Dafoe was thinking about it, he changed his mind and was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I think Willem Dafoe would probably be better, so I'll just fund this thing. And the funny thing is because this is 2000, kind of it's pretty much when I wouldn't say when Willem Dafoe and Malkovich were coming up because they had been known actors for years and they had been in other projects, but I think when they were really starting to get more mainstream attention, I guess would be I guess you could say, or at least not maybe not Malkovich, but Dafoe was kind of really coming to his own, I think,
Mm-hmm.
where in some of the foreign releases, the Brazilian DVD doesn't have the director's name on the cover,
Mhm.
they throw Nicolas Cage in this so that they could try
Right.
to get the recognition from they could try to get the sales from Nicolas Cage being involved in the project. But I feel like people who bought the movie expected to see Nicolas Cage, and I'm sure some of them might have even thought that he was Max Schreck just by the just by that. It's technically not even. I'd have to see what the cover looks like, but it's technically not false advertising because he is involved in the film. You just never see him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of funny. It's kind of like how if you see a DVD for or Blu-ray or whatever for the original Little Shop of Horrors, it throws Jack Nicholson's name on there like he starred in the movie. Meanwhile, he has a tiny bit part and he's barely in for 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
He's the he's the guy who enjoys going to the dentist because he just gets off on the pain. But it's just weird stuff like that, and you run into that all the time with with a bunch of movies, especially in foreign releases. But I just thought that it was really funny to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I love this movie. I found out about this through the Angry Video Game Nerd when he did a video on movies about making movies, and this was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when Nosferatu turned 100 in 2021, he also talked about this movie a little bit too. But it's more on that one where he's talking about movies about making movies. And he also brings up Ed Wood in that too. And that's also where I found out about that movie. I'm so happy that I found that because right after I watched this movie, and it's one of my favorite vampire movies because it's so different. Because it's not just a typical because it's not a typical vampire movie. It's about making Nosferatu, and then it has that little twist that just dances into that lore that a lot of people probably believe to this
Yeah.
day,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really cool, and I think it's probably the best homage to Nosferatu around.
Yeah.
I like this better than the new Nosferatu.
Uh I don't know. For me, I could definitely
It's a different movie, but I
yeah,
like it better.
I definitely could see how it influenced the new one
Hmm.
a lot.
Well,
So
there's also the 1979 remake of Nosferatu, which is also supposed to be very good, but I've never
there
seen
was
that.
there
I've
was
never
also
seen
a
it yet.
there was also a 2023 remake of Nosferatu, apparently a foreign I don't know if it was a foreign language, but it was
Really?
yeah. It wasn't made in America, but I guess it was a smaller budget,
I'm
more
sure.
independent.
Yeah, the remake from the 79 remake is called Nosferatu the Vampire. Vampire with a Y.
Oh yeah, the 2023 remake, it was a
Werner
Kickstarter, funded by
Herzog.
Kickstarter.
Huh. That's cool. Are things still funded on Kickstarter?
I guess so.
I didn't even know that those things are still around. I feel like they were very popular for like 2 years, and then just you never really heard about it again for some weird reason. It was an odd fad that was, for the most part, a really cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe we could talk about that in a future episode of just crowdfunding sites.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I but anyway, back to Shadow of the Vampire. I really like this movie. It's it's a really great time. Check it out if you can. There is some fellow who uploaded it to YouTube for free, but I'm not going to link it because I don't want people to. I don't want YouTube to flag it. So hopefully they're not listening in and they won't do that research. But you can find it and you could do it, or you could pay money. I mean, I'm sure if you still have a DVD player, I'm sure you could buy a DVD of this for like $2.
Yep.
Go for it. Do whatever you need to do. Watch this damn movie. It's awesome. And I mean, for God's sakes, if you like Defoe and you also like John Malkovich, you need to watch this. And if you want to support something Nicolas Cage did, I guess you could too. Oh, that was the other point that I was going to make. Because it was 2000 and John Malkovich and Willem Dafoe weren't as renowned as they are today for the Brazilian DVD and maybe a few other different foreign languages. They're trying to cash in on. It's just funny that they're trying to cash in on Nicolas Cage's name. Meanwhile, you have fucking Willem Dafoe and
Yeah.
John Malkovich
And John
starring in this
Malkovich.
movie.
Right.
Why do you need to throw in any more star power into this? It's already there.
Yeah.
So it's just funny, and it goes to show you like the silly, like what kind of an idiot did, like just the way that people viewed certain things, and it's just like what kind of an idiot didn't have faith in John Malkovich and Willem Dafoe to carry the sales of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was getting at. But yeah, go watch this damn movie. I'm gonna stop talking. I love it.
Yep. It's a great movie. And while you're at it, watch the Nosferatu. Every version of it. The original, the new one, whatever.
Yes. Oh, actually, DVD is actually kind of expensive now because it's probably scarce.
Well, it's for... Oh,
It's on sale for a cool $69.95.
oh, fuck that.
Yeah, maybe don't do it, or you could
Find it
just
somewhere
buy,
else.
or you could buy used and new for $32.25,
Mm.
or $7.77. All right, buy that guy's DVD. $7.77, 7 used and new offers. A lot of biblical numbers in here. But I digress. This movie is amazing. Watch it, do it, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.